6 months had passed since the Leviathan first entered orbit above Zentara Prime. The galaxy was a very different place now, and the changes were still spreading across known space. Captain Morrison stood in the observation deck of the newly established Unity Station, watching construction crews from a dozen different species working together to build humanity's first major diplomatic facility. The station orbited the same planet where the confrontation had begun, but now it served as a symbol of cooperation rather than conflict. "Hard to believe how much has changed," said Commander Bennett, joining him at the viewing window. "Sometimes, change happens slowly over centuries," Morrison replied. "And sometimes it happens in a few days when people finally decide they've had enough of the old ways." The new galactic order was taking shape faster than anyone had expected. The Progressive Alliance had grown to include 23 major civilizations and dozens of smaller species. Trade agreements were being signed weekly. Technology-sharing programs were revolutionizing industries across multiple worlds. Admiral Susan Carter arrived at Unity Station aboard the UES Defiance, the second Titan-class warship to be revealed to the galaxy. Her presence served as a reminder that humanity's demonstration of strength had been just the beginning. "Captain Morrison," Carter said as she boarded the station. "Status report on the integration process." "Better than projected, Admiral. The Zalani Federation has already implemented our medical technologies and seen a 15% increase in average lifespan. The Trade Federation is reporting record prosperity from the new economic agreements." "And the holdout factions?" Morrison's expression grew more serious. "The hegemony and 6 other conservative governments are still refusing all contact, but they're becoming increasingly isolated. 3 more species joined our alliance just last week." Carter nodded with satisfaction. "What about General Vextar? Any change in his position?" "Actually, yes. Our intelligence suggests he's been arguing within the hegemony for a more moderate approach. The complete economic isolation is hurting them badly." Dr. Patricia Kane had spent the last 6 months studying the psychological impact of humanity's emergence as a galactic power. Her findings were both encouraging and sobering. "The galaxy is adapting to our presence faster than we expected," Kane reported to the senior staff. "Most species are discovering that humans make reliable partners once mutual respect is established." "Any signs of resentment or hidden hostility?" asked Carter. "Some, but it's decreasing over time. The benefits of cooperation are becoming too obvious to ignore. Species that were suspicious of us 6 months ago are now asking for expanded partnerships." Chief Engineer Ryan Mitchell had been overseeing the technology sharing programs that were transforming galactic civilization. The results were remarkable. "Admiral, our agricultural techniques have eliminated food shortages on 12 worlds. Our manufacturing processes have increased efficiency by an average of 30% across all partner species, and our medical advances are saving millions of lives annually." "What are we getting in return?" Carter asked. "Access to hyperspace networks that have cut our travel times by 60%. Mining technologies that have tripled our resource extraction capabilities, and scientific knowledge that's advancing our research by decades." This was the vision that humanity had been working toward for 20 years. Genuine partnership where all parties benefited from cooperation. Ambassador Helen Price had established a permanent office on Unity Station and was coordinating diplomatic efforts across the galaxy. The work was challenging but rewarding. "We're seeing a fundamental shift in how galactic politics operate," Price reported. "Instead of the old system where major powers dominated minor ones, we're creating networks of equals working toward common goals." "Any word from the conservative factions?" Carter asked. "Unofficial channels suggest that several governments are reconsidering their positions, The economic pressure is becoming unbearable for them. As if summoned by their conversation, an urgent message arrived at the station. Ambassador Kethvar appeared on the main communication screen with news that surprised everyone. Admiral Carter, I have an important development to report. General Vextar has requested a private meeting to discuss possible terms for the hegemony's integration into the new alliance. Carter smiled slightly. Did he now? What changed his mind? The hegemony's economy has declined by 40% since they isolated themselves from the alliance. Their military is facing equipment shortages because they can't access our manufacturing networks. And 3 of their member species have already approached us about switching sides. The domino effect was exactly what human strategists had predicted. By making alliance membership genuinely beneficial, they had created irresistible pressure for holdout governments to reconsider their positions. Captain Morrison was assigned to handle the delicate negotiations with Vextar. The meeting took place aboard the Leviathan, the same ship that had shattered the General's confidence 6 months earlier. General, Morrison said as Vextar entered the conference room. Welcome aboard. Vextar looked older and more tired than he had during their first encounter. The strain of maintaining the hegemony's isolation was clearly taking its toll. Captain Morrison, Vextar replied formally, I come here to discuss terms for ending the current misunderstanding between our peoples. I appreciate your directness, General. What does the hegemony want? Full integration into the alliance structure, with guarantees that our military traditions and governmental systems will be respected. Morrison considered this carefully. The alliance doesn't require members to change their internal systems, only their external relationships. You would be expected to treat other species as equals and contribute to mutual defense and prosperity. And in return, access to all the benefits that alliance members enjoy. Trade networks, technology sharing, mutual defense, economic cooperation. Your people would see immediate improvements in their quality of life. Vextar was quiet for several minutes, clearly wrestling with the decision. Finally, he spoke. 6 months ago, I believed that strength came from dominance and fear. Your people taught me that real strength comes from earning respect and building partnerships. Are you prepared to recommend alliance membership to your government? I am. But I need assurance that the hegemony will be treated as an equal partner, not a conquered territory. Morrison smiled. General, that's exactly what we've been offering all along. The final negotiations took 3 weeks, but the outcome transformed galactic politics once again. When the hegemony officially joined the alliance, 4 more conservative governments followed within days. Dr. Alan Cooper watched the ceremony from Unity Station as representatives from 31 civilizations signed the expanded Charter of Galactic Cooperation. Captain, he said to Morrison, we've accomplished something that most people thought was impossible. We've created a truly cooperative galactic civilization. It wasn't easy, Morrison replied, and it won't be easy to maintain, but it proves that different species can work together when they're treated with respect. Fleet Admiral Carter delivered the closing address at the ceremony, speaking to an audience that represented billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. 6 months ago, humanity was forced to demonstrate our strength to gain recognition as equals, Carter said. Today, we celebrate not that strength, but what we've built with it, a galactic community based on mutual respect, shared prosperity, and common purpose. As the ceremony concluded, Captain Morrison looked out at the assembled delegates. Representatives who had been enemies 6 months ago were now working together to solve problems that had plagued the galaxy for centuries. The Leviathan still hung in orbit above Zentara Prime, but its role had changed completely. Instead of a weapon of war, it had become a symbol of what could be accomplished when different peoples chose cooperation over conflict. Ambassador Price approached Morrison as the delegates began to leave. "Captain, there's something I want to ask you." "What's that, Ambassador?" "Do you ever regret how this all started? The confrontation, the threats, the show of force?" Morrison thought carefully before answering. "No, I don't. Sometimes peaceful. Change isn't possible until people understand that the status quo can't continue. We didn't start this conflict. We just ended it on our terms." As Unity Station settled into its night cycle, beings from dozens of species worked together in laboratories, meeting rooms, and communication centers. The galaxy had learned that diversity was a source of strength, not weakness. The age of human weakness was over. The age of galactic cooperation had begun. And it had all started when humanity's Titan-class warship entered orbit. And the galaxy stopped breathing long enough to listen to what humans had been trying to say for 20 years. "We are your equals, and it's time you treated us as such." The revolution was complete. The real work of building a better galaxy was just beginning. With 12 hours left on the deadline, the Galactic Council was in chaos. Emergency votes had been called and canceled 3 times as delegates changed their positions. The progressive faction, led by Ambassador Kethvar, was preparing to break away from the main council if necessary. "We cannot let fear and pride destroy our civilization," Kethvar argued in a private meeting with 7 other progressive leaders. "Humanity has shown us their strength. Now they're offering us partnership. We would be fools to reject it." Ambassador Siu. Shendar nodded in agreement. "My government has run the economic projections. A trade partnership with Earth could increase our prosperity by 40% within 5 years. "And if we fight them?" asked Ambassador Telvor of the Free Worlds Alliance. "Then we lose everything," Kethvar replied. "Have you seen the tactical analysis? That one ship could probably destroy half our fleet before we could scratch its armor." Meanwhile, the conservative faction was holding their own secret meeting. General Vextar was trying to convince wavering delegates to stand firm against human demands. "If we surrender to their ultimatum, we set a precedent," Vextar argued. "Every minor species in the galaxy will think they can threaten us into giving them whatever they want." "But humans aren't a minor species anymore," pointed out Ambassador Yeltar. "That ship out there proves they're more advanced than we thought." "One ship!" Vextar slammed his fist on the table. "We have 5,000. Ships! Numbers have to count for something." What Vextar didn't know was that human intelligence was monitoring both meetings. Dr. Patricia Kane had broken their encryption hours ago and was feeding information to Ambassador Price. "The conservatives are planning to reject our terms and call for an immediate attack," Kane reported. "But the progressives are ready to accept everything we've asked for." Price considered this information carefully. "What's the split in voting power?" "Close to even. It could go either way depending on the undecided delegates. On the Leviathan, Captain Morrison was preparing for the possibility that negotiations would fail. The alien fleet had moved into what they thought was an optimal attack formation, completely unaware that human sensors were tracking every movement. "Captain," reported Commander Bennett, "Oracle has finished analyzing their battle formation. It's identified 17 critical weaknesses that we could exploit." "Show me," Morrison said. The main display showed the alien fleet positions with highlighted areas where coordinated attacks could cause maximum confusion. Oracle had studied decades of alien military doctrine and knew exactly how each species would react under pressure. Their communication hubs are poorly protected, Bennett continued. If we take out their command ships first, the rest of the fleet will lose coordination within minutes. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, Morrison replied. But if it does, we'll be ready. Back on Earth, Fleet Admiral Carter was receiving reports from human colonies throughout the galaxy. The response was mixed but encouraging. Admiral, her aide reported, 37 colonies have reported that local alien governments are requesting private meetings. They want to establish diplomatic relations independent of whatever the Council decides. And our response? We're accepting all requests for peaceful contact. But we're also making it clear that any cooperation must be based on equality and respect. This was exactly what Carter had hoped for. Even if the Galactic Council rejected humanity's terms, individual species were beginning to recognize the new reality. The old system was breaking down, and a new order was emerging. In the council chamber, Ambassador Price was making her final presentation before the deadline expired. Members of the council, she began, you have had 3 days to consider our proposal. The choice before you is simple. Accept humanity as an equal partner, or watch as galactic civilization fragments into competing factions. You're threatening us with civil war, accused General Vextar. I'm warning you about the consequences of maintaining an unjust system, Price corrected. Change is coming whether you accept it or not. The only question is whether that change will be peaceful or violent. Ambassador Kethvar stood up. The Zalani Federation formally accepts all human terms and requests immediate bilateral negotiations. Within minutes, 6 other progressive governments made similar announcements. The conservative faction looked shocked as their alliance crumbled. Before their eyes! This is madness! Vextar shouted. You're surrendering everything our ancestors built. We're building something better, Kethvar replied calmly. Something based on mutual respect instead of fear and dominance. As the deadline approached, it became clear that the galaxy was indeed splitting apart. Roughly half the major civilizations were ready to work with humanity, while the other half remained committed to resistance. Captain Morrison received new orders from Admiral Carter. Proceed with Phase 2 of the operation. Phase 2 had been planned for exactly this scenario. Instead of fighting a united galaxy, humanity would work with progressive species to isolate the conservative factions. All stations, prepare to receive diplomatic shuttles, Morrison announced to his crew. We're about to become the center of a new galactic government. The next few hours were remarkable. Shuttle after shuttle docked with the Leviathan as progressive leaders came aboard to sign formal agreements with humanity. Each treaty established human colonies as equal partners with full rights and protections. Dr. Alan Cooper watched the proceedings with amazement. Captain, we're witnessing the birth of a new galactic order. These agreements will reshape interstellar politics for centuries. Meanwhile, the conservative factions were discovering that their threats carried no weight. When General Vextar demanded that progressive species abandon their agreements with humanity, he was politely but firmly told that those days were over. Chief Engineer Ryan Mitchell was coordinating the technical aspects of the new partnerships. Human technology, that had been secret for decades, was now being shared with trusted allies. We're providing medical technology to the Zalani, agricultural advances to the Trade Federation, and manufacturing techniques to the Free Worlds Alliance, Mitchell reported. In return, we're getting access to their hyperspace navigation networks and resource extraction methods. The conservative species watched in growing alarm as the new alliance grew stronger by the hour. Their military superiority was meaningless if they couldn't maintain economic and political stability. Ambassador Price concluded the day's negotiations with a clear message to both factions. The old galactic order is dead. You can be part of building its replacement, or you can cling to the past until it destroys you. As night fell on Zentara Prime, the galaxy had fundamentally changed. Humanity was no longer an outsider begging for recognition. They were now the center of a new alliance that promised genuine equality and cooperation. The conservative factions faced a difficult choice: adapt to the new reality or find themselves increasingly isolated and irrelevant. General Vextar stared out at the human ship that had started this revolution. The Leviathan hung in space like a monument to the end of an era. Everything his civilization had believed about power and order had been proven wrong in just 3 days. "Sir," his aide said quietly, "the Hegemony Council is requesting your immediate return for emergency consultations." Vextar nodded slowly. "Tell them I'll be coming home with recommendations for a complete strategic review." The age of human weakness was over. The age of galactic partnership was just beginning. 24 hours had passed since Ambassador Price delivered humanity's ultimatum. Across the galaxy, emergency meetings were taking place on every major world. The 72-hour deadline was creating pressure unlike anything galactic civilization had ever experienced. On Zentara Prime, the Galactic Council was in permanent session. Representatives who had barely spoken to each other in decades were now forced to work together to decide their collective fate. Ambassador Kethvar looked exhausted as he reviewed the latest reports from his government. The Zelani Federation is prepared to accept human demands, he announced to the chamber. Our analysis shows that partnership with humanity offers more benefits than conflict. Benefits? General Vextar slammed his hand on the table. They're demanding we give up everything that has made our civilization stable for centuries. What stability? Replied Ambassador Shendar. We've been living in a false peace built on keeping other species weak. That was never going to last. Forever. The chamber was divided into 3 clear factions. The progressives, led by Kethvar, wanted to accept human terms and work toward genuine cooperation. The conservatives, following Vexitar, insisted on rejecting the demands and fighting if necessary. A third group remained undecided, afraid of both options. Meanwhile, Captain Morrison was dealing with his own challenges aboard the Leviathan. The alien fleet surrounding his ship had grown larger as reinforcements arrived from across the galaxy. His sensors now counted over 5,000 enemy vessels. "Sir," reported Commander Bennett, "we're tracking ships from 43 different species. Some of these fleets have never worked together before." "Any signs of coordination between them?" Morrison asked. "Actually, sir, it's getting worse. 3 ships collided yesterday because they couldn't agree on formation protocols. There was a shooting incident between Hegemony and Crystal Empire forces over who had authority in Section 7. Dr. Alan Cooper looked up from his analysis station. "Captain, this is fascinating from a military science perspective. They've assembled the largest fleet in galactic history, but it's completely dysfunctional." "Explain." "Different species use different communication frequencies. Their tactical doctrines are incompatible. Some fleets use clockwise patrol patterns, while others use counterclockwise. They can't even agree on what constitutes a threat." "Level." Morrison smiled grimly. "So we're facing 5,000 ships that can't work together effectively." Exactly, sir. If fighting breaks out, they'll probably cause as much damage to each other as they do to us. This was exactly what human military planners had hoped for. Alien civilizations had grown soft during their long peace. They had forgotten how to coordinate large-scale military operations, especially between different species. On Earth, Fleet Admiral Carter was monitoring reports from human colonies throughout the galaxy. The news was both encouraging and concerning. Admiral, her aide reported, 12 colonies are reporting that local alien governments have opened diplomatic channels. They want to negotiate separate agreements with us. And the others? 15 colonies are reporting increased military patrols in their systems. Some aliens are trying to use our people as hostages to pressure us into backing down. Carter's expression hardened. Send a message to all colony governors. Any alien government that threatens human civilians will be treated as a hostile force. No exceptions. Ma'am, should we move additional ships to protect the colonies? No. If we start moving our fleets around, it'll look like we're backing down. Our people knew the risks when we started this. They'll hold their positions. This was the most dangerous part of humanity's strategy. By revealing their true strength, they had made themselves targets. But showing weakness now would undo everything they had accomplished. Back in the council chamber, Ambassador Price was attending her second day of negotiations. The aliens were starting to understand that she wasn't going to compromise on the fundamental issues. "Ambassador," said the council president, "surely we can reach some middle ground. Perhaps humanity could be granted observer status initially, with full membership considered after a trial period." Observer status? Price's voice remained calm, but everyone in the room could sense her displeasure. "You mean the same status we've had for 20 years? The same status that allowed you to ignore us when our people were being killed? But the changes you're demanding are so extensive." "The changes we're demanding are justice," Price interrupted. "And justice delayed is justice denied." Ambassador Yeltar tried a different approach. "What guarantee do we have that humanity won't abuse this new position? Power corrupts, even among humans." Price smiled slightly. "You want a guarantee? Look at your own history. How many of your civilizations went through expansionist phases before settling into peaceful cooperation? Humanity is simply catching up to where you are now. But you're doing it with weapons pointed at our heads. We're doing it with the strength to ensure we're taken seriously. There's a difference." Dr. Patricia Kane was monitoring the negotiations from the Leviathan when she noticed something interesting in the alien communication patterns. "Captain," she reported, "I'm seeing fractures in their alliance. The progressive faction is starting to communicate privately with each other, separate from the main council sessions. Are they planning something?" "I think they're planning to accept our terms whether the conservatives agree or not." This was an unexpected development. Human planners had assumed the galaxy would respond as a unified bloc, either accepting or rejecting humanity's demands together. Instead, it looked like galactic civilization itself might split apart. Morrison opened a secure channel to Earth. "Admiral Carter, we may have a problem." Carter's face appeared on the main screen. "What kind of problem, Captain?" "The alien alliance is fragmenting. Some species want to work with us, others want to fight us. If this continues, we might end up with a galactic civil war instead of a unified response to our demands." Carter considered this carefully. "That could actually work in our favor, Jake. A divided galaxy is easier to deal with than a united one. But it could also mean decades of instability and conflict. Better than decades of being treated as second-class citizens." Stay on mission, Captain. Let them sort out their internal politics. As the second day of negotiations ended, the pressure was beginning to show on all sides. Alien delegates looked exhausted and stressed. Their governments were receiving conflicting advice from military commanders, economic advisors, and political analysts. The human position, meanwhile, remained unchanged. Ambassador Price retired to her quarters with the same calm confidence she had shown from the beginning. Chief Engineer Ryan Mitchell was running final diagnostics on the Leviathan systems when he received an interesting report from his technical teams. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Tom Anderson, "we've been monitoring alien ship communications. Some of their newer vessels are having mechanical problems." "What kind of problems?" "Engine failures, navigation errors, life support issues. It looks like they rushed these ships into service without proper testing." Mitchell smiled. "They panicked and brought ships that weren't ready for deployment. Another advantage for us. The aliens were learning that impressive numbers didn't mean much if the ships weren't properly maintained and operated. Human vessels, by contrast, had been tested and retested for years before being deployed." As the third day of negotiations began, everyone knew that time was running out. The 72-hour deadline was approaching fast, and no clear consensus had emerged from the alien side. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would happen when humanity's patience finally ran out. The alien fleet was in chaos. Admiral Vexi Tar watched as his carefully planned formation fell apart. Ships were colliding with each other as they tried to retreat from the human vessel's weapons range. Communications channels filled with panicked voices in a dozen different languages. "Sir, what are your orders?" asked his tactical officer. Vextar stared at the human ship. It hadn't moved from its position, but somehow it dominated the entire battlefield. "Prepare the boarding parties," he said finally. "Sir, if we can't destroy that ship, we'll take it. Assemble Marines from all species. Send everything we have." What Vextar didn't know was that humans had been planning for exactly this scenario. On the Leviathan, Sergeant Mike Torres was briefing his security teams in the main hangar bay. "Listen up," Torres said to the assembled soldiers. "Intelligence says they're going to try boarding us. They think they can overwhelm us with numbers." The human Marines looked eager rather than worried. They had trained for multi-species combat for years. Every alien fighting style, every species' strengths and weaknesses, every possible boarding scenario had been studied and practiced. "Remember your training," Torres continued. "Zelani troops are fast but fragile. Hegemony soldiers are strong, but slow to adapt. Crystal Empire warriors rely on energy shields that don't work well in close quarters. Use their overconfidence against them." Captain Morrison watched the alien preparations from his bridge. "How many boarding craft are they sending?" he asked. 200 ships, sir," reported Commander Bennett. "Looks like they're bringing about 10,000 Marines." "Against our 300 defenders? They still don't understand us, do they?" "Sir?" Morrison smiled grimly. "No, they don't. Give Sergeant Torres the green light. Let's teach them about human defensive tactics." The alien boarding craft approached the Leviathan like a swarm of angry insects. Each small ship carried 50 elite soldiers from different species. They had trained for boarding actions against normal alien vessels, ships with wide corridors, elegant designs, and predictable layouts. The Leviathan was nothing like that. The first wave of aliens cut through the outer hull and found themselves in narrow, twisted passages designed to confuse attackers. The corridors branched and curved in ways that made no sense to alien minds used to logical, efficient designs. "This is Squad Leader Kenth to command," came a voice over the alien communications. The ship's interior is strange. We can't find our way to the bridge. Use your scanners, Vextar replied from his flagship. Sir, there's some kind of interference. Our equipment isn't working properly. What the aliens didn't know was that the Leviathan's hull was filled with materials that blocked their sensors. The humans had studied alien technology for decades and knew exactly how to disrupt it. Sergeant Torres waited in ambush position with Alpha Squad. His motion sensors showed alien troops moving through the maze of corridors, getting more lost and frustrated by the minute. Torres to all units, he whispered into his communicator. Enemy is spreading out and getting confused. Perfect. Begin Operation Mousetrap. The human defensive plan was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of trying to stop the aliens at the hull, breach. They let them inside. The ship's confusing layout would split the alien forces into small groups. Then the humans would hunt them down one squad at a time. The first contact came in Section C7. A group of hegemony soldiers, big and heavily armored, ran into Corporal Janet Hayes and her fire team. The aliens expected the humans to fall back or call for reinforcements. Instead, Hayes and her soldiers attacked immediately, using weapons designed specifically for close-quarters combat against armored targets. The fight lasted less than 2 minutes. When it was over, 12 alien soldiers were unconscious on the floor, and the humans hadn't taken a single casualty. Contact in Section C7, Hayes reported. 12 hostiles neutralized, no injuries on our side. Similar reports started coming in from all over the ship. Human soldiers were using hit-and-run tactics, superior knowledge of the ship's layout, and weapons specifically designed to counter alien armor and shields. Dr. Alan Cooper was monitoring the boarding action from the science deck. What he saw amazed him, even though he had helped plan it. Captain, he said to Morrison, the aliens are fighting like they're in a normal ship. They keep trying to reach the bridge through the main corridors. They don't realize we deliberately made those passages into death traps. How are our people doing? Better than expected. The aliens brought troops from 6 different species, but they're not coordinating well. Each group is fighting using their own tactics, and they're getting in each other's way. On the alien flagship, Admiral Vextar was getting increasingly desperate reports from his boarding parties. Sir, we've lost contact with Squad 7 through 12, reported his communications officer. What do you mean, lost contact? Their signals just stopped, sir. No distress calls, no battle reports. They just went silent. Vexatar felt cold fear creeping into his chest. His elite Marines were disappearing inside the human ship without a trace. Back on the Leviathan, Sergeant Torres was coordinating the defense from a mobile command post. His soldiers moved through hidden passages and service tunnels that didn't appear on any ship plans the aliens might have stolen. Bravo team, this is Torres. You have a group of Crystal Empire warriors heading your way. Remember, their energy shields don't work well against kinetic weapons. Copy that, Sergeant. We're ready for them. The humans had spent years studying videos of alien combat techniques. They knew that Crystal Empire soldiers relied heavily on personal energy shields that could stop most alien weapons. But human firearms used solid projectiles, not energy beams. When the Crystal Empire warriors ran into Bravo team, their shields were useless. The human soldiers cut through them like they weren't even there. Torres to command, the sergeant reported. Bravo team has neutralized 15 Crystal Empire soldiers. Total enemy casualties now at, let me check, 143. And our casualties? Asked Commander Bennett. 2 soldiers with minor injuries, ma'am. Nothing serious. The tide of the boarding action was becoming clear. The aliens had brought their best troops, their most advanced equipment, and overwhelming numbers. But they were fighting on human terms, in a ship designed by humans, against soldiers who had trained specifically for this type of combat. Dr. Patricia Kane was analyzing the psychological impact of the failed boarding attempt. "Captain, their morale is collapsing. The troops still fighting are starting to panic. Some of them are trying to surrender." "What's our policy on prisoners?" Morrison asked. "Standard Earth Forces protocol, sir. Accept surrender. Provide medical care. Treat them according to galactic conventions." This confused the aliens even more. They had expected humans to be savage and brutal in victory. Instead, human soldiers were treating wounded aliens and accepting surrenders with professional courtesy. The last organized alien resistance collapsed in Section D12. A mixed group of soldiers from 4 different species had barricaded themselves in a storage room, thinking they could hold out until rescue arrived. Sergeant Torres approached their position with a translator device. "This is Sergeant Torres of Earth Forces. You are surrounded and cut off from your ships. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to galactic law." The alien response came in accented English. "We demand to speak to your commander." "I am the commander of this operation. Will you surrender?" There was a long pause. Then the storage room door opened, and 12 alien soldiers came out with their hands raised. Torres accepted their surrender with the same professional courtesy he would show to human prisoners. This was another lesson the galaxy needed to learn. Humans could be ruthless enemies, but they were honorable victors. Admiral Vextar received the final report an hour after the boarding action began. Of the 10,000 Marines he had sent to capture the human ship, over 8,000 were dead, wounded, or captured. The remaining troops had retreated to their ships in complete disorder. The human casualties, 7 minor injuries. "How is this possible?" Vextar asked his staff. No one had an answer. The humans had just demonstrated military capabilities that the galaxy didn't know existed. They had turned a successful boarding action into a complete disaster using tactics that no alien commander had ever seen before. On the Leviathan's bridge, Captain Morrison received the final casualty reports from Sergeant Torres. "All hostile. Boarders have been neutralized or captured, sir. The ship is secure." "Well done, Sergeant. Get medical teams to help the wounded aliens. Show them that humans know how to win with honor." The galaxy was learning that humans were full of surprises, and this was just the beginning. The Galactic Council chamber remained silent for long moments after Ambassador Price finished speaking. Representatives exchanged worried glances, each waiting for someone else to respond first. Finally, Ambassador Kethvar stood up. "Ambassador Price," he said carefully, "your presentation has been enlightening. But you must understand that what you're proposing would require fundamental changes to how galactic civilization operates." Price smiled politely. "Yes, it would. That's exactly the point." General Vextar couldn't contain himself any longer. "You speak of partnership, but you came here with a warship. You attacked our fleet." "We defended ourselves when you attacked us," Price corrected. "And we showed remarkable restraint. Our ship could have destroyed your entire fleet instead of simply disabling a few vessels." "Remarkable restraint?" Vexatar's voice rose. "You humiliated the combined forces of 12 civilizations. We demonstrated that the old balance of power no longer exists," Price replied calmly. "You can choose to accept that reality, or you can keep fighting it. but the outcome will be the same either way. Ambassador Shendar, from the Trade Federation, leaned forward. "What exactly are you demanding from us?" Price activated another holographic display. "Our requirements are straightforward. First, formal recognition of humanity as a major galactic power, with full voting rights in all interstellar organizations." Murmurs of protest rose from several delegates, but Price continued. "Second, immediate end to all trade restrictions and economic sanctions against human worlds. Third, reparations for the unprovoked attacks on our colonies. And fourth, establishment of mutual defense agreements based on equality and respect." "Impossible," declared Ambassador Yeltar of the Crystal Empire. "These demands would upset the entire galactic order." "The galactic order was already upset the moment our ship entered orbit," Price said. "We're simply offering you a way to manage that change peacefully." Meanwhile, on the Leviathan, Captain Morrison was receiving reports from across the galaxy. The news of humanity's demonstration had spread faster than anyone expected. "Captain," reported Commander Bennett, "we're getting intelligence reports from our listening posts. The reaction is exactly what we predicted." "Show me," Morrison said. Bennett activated the main display screen. It showed a map of known space with different colored indicators marking various civilizations' responses. "The progressive species are calling for immediate negotiations," Bennett explained. "The Meridian Republic has already announced they support recognizing humanity as an equal partner. The Free Worlds Alliance is expressing interest in military cooperation agreements. And the conservative factions? The hegemony is mobilizing additional fleets. The Star Empire is calling this an act of war. Several smaller powers are trying to form their own alliance against us." Morrison nodded. Exactly what Admiral Carter predicted. The galaxy is splitting along ideological lines. Dr. Alan Cooper approached with a data tablet. "Captain, I've been analyzing the political implications. This could actually work in our favor." "How so?" "The species that want to work with us represent about 60% of galactic trade and 40% of military strength. If we can secure agreements with them, the hostile factions will be isolated." Back on Earth, Fleet Admiral Carter was monitoring the situation from her command center. The holographic displays around her showed the positions of human ships throughout. Known space, alien fleet movements, and political developments on dozens of worlds. "Admiral," said her aide, "we're receiving requests for assistance from 17 different human colonies. They're reporting increased alien military activity in their sectors." "Defensive posture only," Carter ordered. "We're not starting a war, but we're not going to be caught unprepared either." "What about the Leviathan, ma'am?" "Captain Morrison has his orders. He stays on station until Ambassador Price completes her mission." Carter studied the strategic display. Everything was proceeding according to plan, but she knew the most dangerous moment was still ahead. When cornered, even peaceful species could become desperate and unpredictable. In the council chamber, Ambassador Price was facing increasingly hostile questions from the conservative delegates. "You speak of partnership," said General Vextar, "but you came here with threats and violence. How can we trust anything you say?" "Because," Price replied, "we're giving you a choice. We could have simply started conquering territory and imposing our will by force. Instead, we're offering to work within the existing system, with modifications that benefit everyone." "Benefit everyone?" Ambassador Yeltar laughed bitterly. "You mean benefit humanity at our expense?" Price's expression hardened slightly. "At your expense?" Let me tell you what has been at our expense. 20 years of being treated as second-class citizens. 20 years of unfair trade agreements that kept our worlds poor while enriching yours. 20 years of being ignored when we asked for help and attacked when we tried to defend ourselves. She stood up and walked to the center of the chamber. We're not asking you to give us anything we haven't earned. We're demanding the respect and recognition that should have been ours from the beginning. Ambassador Kethvar tried to find middle ground. Perhaps we could arrange some sort of gradual integration process. No, Price said firmly. Gradual integration is how we ended up in this situation. You've had 20 years to treat us fairly. The time for gradual change is over. The chamber erupted in arguments as delegates shouted at each other in multiple languages. Price stood calmly in the center of it all, waiting for order to be restored. Finally, the council president called for silence. Ambassador Price, surely you understand that what you're asking for cannot be decided quickly. These matters require careful consideration. Of course, Price agreed. You have 72 hours to reach a decision. 72 hours? The president looked shocked. That's impossible. We need weeks, perhaps months, to properly evaluate. 72 hours, Price repeated. After that, humanity will assume that your answer is no, and we will act accordingly. What does that mean? Demanded Vextar. Price smiled, but there was no warmth in it. It means we stop asking for permission to be treated as equals. We simply take our rightful place in galactic affairs with or without your cooperation. The threat was clear, even though Price had phrased it diplomatically. If the galaxy wouldn't accept humanity as partners, humans would establish themselves as the dominant power by force. Dr. Patricia Kane, monitoring the negotiations from the Leviathan, sent a private message to Captain Morrison. The psychological pressure is working perfectly. Half the delegates look ready to agree immediately. The other half are terrified of what happens if they refuse. Morrison smiled as he read the message. Inform Ambassador Price that we're ready to support whatever decision she makes. As the council session broke up into emergency meetings, Ambassador Price was escorted to quarters on the station. She had done her part. Now it was up to the galaxy to decide its own future. Back on the Leviathan, Chief Engineer Ryan Mitchell was making final preparations for whatever came next. Captain, he reported, all systems are ready. If they choose to fight, we can hold this position indefinitely. If they choose to negotiate, we're prepared to host diplomatic meetings aboard ship. And if they choose to surrender? Morrison asked. Then we'll have to figure out how to govern a galaxy, Mitchell replied with a grin. Morrison looked out at the alien fleet, still maintaining their distance from the human ship. In 72 hours, everything would change. The galaxy would either accept humanity as an equal partner, or it would learn what humans could do when they stopped asking politely. Either way, the age of human weakness was over forever. The countdown had begun. The Galactic Council chamber on Zentara Prime had never seen such chaos. Representatives from dozens of species shouted at each other while Admiral Vextar's report played on the main screen. The failure of the boarding action had shattered the last of their confidence. 10,000 Marines defeated by 300 humans, said Ambassador Kethvar, his voice barely above a whisper. How is that even possible? They were ready for us, replied General Shendar from the Trade Federation. Everything we did, they had planned for. It's like they've been studying us for years. Because they have been, said Ambassador Yeltar of the Crystal Empire. Look at the evidence. Every human trade mission, every diplomatic contact, every time we thought we were dealing with innocent merchants, they were gathering intelligence. The terrible truth was becoming clear to everyone in the room. Humanity had been playing a long game, pretending to be weak while secretly preparing for war. 20 years of careful planning and preparation had led to this moment. Admiral Vextar looked defeated as he addressed the council. "They let us shoot first. Our most powerful weapons couldn't even scratch their armor. Then they disabled 47 of our ships with a single volley. We're not dealing with the primitive humans we thought we knew." On the Leviathan, Captain Morrison stood in the observation deck, watching the alien fleet struggle to reorganize after their failed attack. The ships were keeping their distance now, clearly afraid to get too close to the human vessel. Commander Bennett joined him at the viewing window. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They want to negotiate. Do they now?" Morrison smiled. "After 20 years of ignoring our requests for talks, suddenly they want to negotiate." "What should I tell them, sir?" "Tell them we'll consider it. But first, they need to understand something about humans. We don't negotiate from weakness." The message Morrison was about to send would change everything. It wasn't just a response to the alien request for talks. It was a declaration that would reshape galactic politics. Dr. Patricia Kane had been analyzing alien communications for hours. What she found was both encouraging and troubling. "Captain, I've been monitoring their discussions. Some species want to find a peaceful solution, but others are talking about calling in reinforcements from across the galaxy." "How many reinforcements could they bring?" Morrison asked. "Potentially thousands more ships, sir, but that might actually work in our favor." Morrison raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "The more ships they bring, the more chaos in their command structure. We've seen how badly they coordinate with just 12 species. Imagine trying to coordinate 50 different military doctrines." Meanwhile, Ambassador Helen Price was preparing to leave Earth aboard the fastest ship in the human fleet. As humanity's chief negotiator, she would be the one to deliver Earth's demands to the galaxy. But first, she needed to understand exactly what those demands would be. Fleet Admiral Susan Carter briefed Price in her secure office on Earth. "Helen, this isn't just about the colonies they destroyed. This is about humanity's place in galactic civilization." "What exactly are we asking for?" Price said. "Everything we should have had from the beginning. Equal treatment, fair trade agreements, representation in galactic government, and reparations for the attacks on our people." Price studied the documents Carter handed her. "These demands are going to shock them." "Good. They need to understand that the old relationship is over. We're not asking for charity anymore. We're demanding our rights as equals." Back on the Leviathan, Chief Engineer Ryan Mitchell was making final adjustments to the ship's weapon systems. The demonstration they had given was just a taste of what the ship could do. "Captain," Mitchell reported over the intercom, "all systems are operating at peak efficiency. If they want to escalate this conflict, we're ready." "What's our status on ammunition?" Morrison asked. "We're loaded for a full-scale battle, sir. But honestly, based on what we've seen so far, I don't think we'll need half of what we're carrying." The truth was that the Leviathan had been designed to fight against a galaxy-wide coalition. Every weapons system, every defensive measure, every tactical capability had been planned with the assumption that humanity would face overwhelming odds. Dr. Alan Cooper was conducting a detailed analysis of the alien fleet's capabilities. What he found confirmed their earlier assessments. "Captain, I've finished studying their ships. They're built for patrolling trade routes and fighting pirates, not for major fleet actions. Most of them don't even have heavy armor." "What about their weapons?" energy-based systems designed for precision strikes against small targets. They're not built to penetrate heavy armor or shields. Honestly, sir, it's like they've never fought a real war. That was exactly the problem. The galaxy had been at peace for so long that they had forgotten how to fight. Their ships were police vessels, not warships. Their tactics were designed for law enforcement, not military operations. The humans, on the other hand, had been preparing for total war. Ambassador Helen Price's ship, the UES Diplomat, dropped out of hyperspace near Zentara Prime 6 hours after the boarding action failed. The sleek vessel was much smaller than the Leviathan, but it carried technology that made it nearly as advanced. "This is Ambassador Price requesting permission to dock with the Galactic Council Station," she transmitted. The response was immediate. "Permission granted, Ambassador. Please proceed to Docking Bay 7. Price smiled as her ship approached the station. The aliens were so eager to talk that they were willing to let a human vessel dock with their most important political center. 6 months ago, they wouldn't have allowed a human ship within 100,000 kilometers of Zentara Prime. On the council station, emergency preparations were being made to receive the human ambassador. No one knew what to expect. Would she come with demands for surrender, threats of more attacks, or genuine offers of peace? Ambassador Kethvar was chosen to greet the human diplomat. As he waited in the docking bay, he tried to prepare himself for whatever was coming. The human ship docked with mechanical precision. When the airlock opened, Ambassador Price stepped out wearing formal diplomatic attire. She looked completely calm and confident, as if she were arriving for a routine trade meeting rather than negotiations that could determine the fate of galactic civilization. "Ambassador Kethvar," Price said with a polite smile, "thank you for receiving me on such short notice." Kethvar was struck by how normal she seemed. After the terrifying display of human military power, he had expected someone more intimidating. Instead, he found himself facing a professional diplomat who could have come from any civilized species. "Ambassador Price, welcome to Zentara Prime. The Council is eager to hear what humanity has to say." "I'm sure they are," Price replied. "Shall we proceed to the chamber?" As they walked through the station's corridors, Kethvar tried to read the human ambassador's mood. She seemed confident but not arrogant, determined but not hostile. It was unsettling in a way that was completely different from the fear inspired by the Leviathan. The council chamber was packed with representatives from every major civilization. When Ambassador Price entered, the room fell silent. Everyone wanted to hear what the humans would say. Price took her place at the speaking podium and looked around the room calmly. When she spoke, her voice was clear and steady. "Members of the Galactic Council, I come here today not as a supplicant seeking your favor, but as the representative of a sovereign power demanding recognition of our rights." The room erupted in surprised murmurs. This was not what they had expected. "For 20 years, Price continued, humanity has tried to work within your system. We sent peaceful trade missions. We requested membership in your organizations. We asked for help when our colonies were attacked. And for 20 years you told us to know our place." Admiral Vextar shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He was beginning to understand where this was going. "Today, you learned something about humanity that you should have known all along. We are not the weak, primitive species you believed us to be. We have been watching you, studying you, learning from you, and we have been preparing." Price activated a holographic display that showed images of the Leviathan and its capabilities. "The ship you face today is not unique. It is the first of many. While you have been enjoying your comfortable peace, we have been building a fleet. designed for one purpose, ensuring that humanity never again has to beg for respect. The silence in the room was complete. Every representative understood that they were hearing a declaration that would change everything. "But we didn't come here to conquer you," Price said, her tone softening slightly. "We came here to offer you something better than the relationship we've had before. We're offering you partnership, real partnership, between equals." She paused, letting that sink in before delivering her final message. "The question now is whether you're wise enough to accept it." The emergency alarm screamed through the halls of the Galactic Council building on Zentara Prime. Ambassador Kethvar dropped his morning tea as red lights flashed across every screen in his office. His assistant rushed in, her face pale with fear. "Sir, you need to see this right now," she said, her voice shaking. Kethvar looked at the main display screen. What he saw made his blood turn cold. A massive ship hung in space above their planet. It was bigger than anything he had ever seen before. The computer showed its size as 15 kilometers long. That was impossible. No one built ships that big. "Where did it come from?" Kethvar asked. "It just appeared, sir. One moment space was empty. The next moment it was there. Our sensors didn't detect it coming." Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on dozens of worlds. Military commanders stared at their screens in shock. Politicians called emergency meetings. Trade ships stopped moving and hid behind asteroids. Everyone was asking the same question. What was that giant ship, and who built it? On the bridge of the UES Leviathan, Captain Jake Morrison stood calm and steady. Around him, his crew worked, at their stations with quiet efficiency. The ship's massive windows showed the blue and green planet below. It looked peaceful, but Morrison knew that wasn't true anymore. "Status report," Morrison said to his executive officer, Commander Lisa. Bennett checked her tablet. "All systems are working perfectly, sir. The jump went exactly as planned. We're holding position at 50,000 kilometers above the planet." And their response? "Every ship in the system is moving away from us. Their military fleets are sending emergency signals to each other. Some civilian ships are trying to jump to hyperspace, but they're so scared they keep making mistakes." Morrison nodded. This was exactly what they expected. For 20 years, the galaxy had seen humans as weak and unimportant. They thought Earth's people were good for manual labor and nothing else. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "Sir," Bennett said, "we're getting hundreds of communication requests. Every government in this sector wants to talk to us." "Let them wait," Morrison replied. "Fear makes people think more clearly." The Leviathan was unlike any ship ever built. Where alien vessels were smooth and elegant, the human warship looked like a floating fortress. Its hull was covered in armor, plating that could stop planet-killing weapons. Gun turrets stuck out from every surface. The ship's reactor burned like a small star, giving off so much energy that it showed up on sensors from 3 systems away. Dr. Alan Cooper walked onto the bridge carrying a data pad. As the ship's chief science officer, he had been watching the alien responses to their arrival. "Captain, the readings are fascinating," Cooper said. "Every alien government in the sector has gone to maximum alert. They're scrambling military fleets that haven't worked together in centuries." "How many ships are they gathering?" Morrison asked. "Current count shows over 2,000 vessels heading this way. But, sir, these ships weren't built for real war. They're patrol boats and peacekeeping vessels. Nothing like what we're carrying." Morrison smiled slightly. The aliens still didn't understand. They thought numbers would save them. They had no idea what human engineering could do when humans were angry enough. Fleet Admiral Susan Carter sat in her office on Earth, watching reports come in from across the galaxy. She had spent 20 years planning this moment. 20 years of secret construction and hidden research. 20 years of letting the galaxy think humans were harmless. The attack on Earth's colonies had been the final insult. Alien pirates had destroyed 3 human settlements, killing thousands of innocent people. When Earth asked the Galactic Council for help, they were told that humans needed to accept their place in the cosmic order. That was their mistake. Carter opened a secure channel to the Leviathan. Morrison's face appeared on her screen. "Admiral," Morrison said, "the target is in sight." "Any regrets, Captain?" "None, ma'am. It's time they learned to respect us." Carter nodded. "Proceed with the demonstration." Back on Zentara Prime, emergency meetings were happening in every government building. The Galactic Council had called an emergency session. Representatives from 12 major civilizations sat around a massive table, all talking at once. "We need to demand they leave immediately," said General Vextar of the Hegemony. "No single ship can threaten the entire galaxy." "But look at the size of it," replied Ambassador Shendar from the Trade Federation. "Our weapons might not even scratch something that big." "Impossible," Vexatar snapped. "Humans are a primitive species. They barely have hyperspace travel. This must be some kind of trick." Ambassador Kethvar looked at the tactical display again. The human ship hadn't moved since it arrived. It just sat there in space, watching them. Somehow, that was more frightening than if it had started shooting. "What if we're wrong about them?" Kethvar said quietly. "Wrong how?" Vextar demanded. "What, if they've been hiding their real strength all along?" The room fell silent. No one wanted to think about that possibility. If humans had been pretending to be weak while building ships like this, what else were they hiding? On the Leviathan, Morrison received a message from the planet below. The Galactic Council was demanding that he identify himself and state his intentions. "Send a response," Morrison told his communications officer. "Tell them this is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Leviathan. We're here to discuss humanity's future in galactic affairs. Sir, they're asking if we come in peace." Morrison looked out at the stars. Peace was what they wanted, but it had to be peace with respect, peace with equality, peace where humans were treated as equals, not servants. "Tell them we come with the hope of peace," Morrison said, "but we're prepared for war." The galaxy held its breath. For the first time in centuries, a new power had announced itself, a power that nobody understood and nobody was prepared for. The age of human weakness was over. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the tactical display that showed the human vessel. His ship, the Hegemony's pride, looked like a toy next to the massive human warship. Around him, his officers worked frantically to understand what they were facing. "Analysis report," Vextar ordered. His science officer, a nervous young alien with 4 arms, checked his readings 3 times before speaking. "Sir, the energy signatures don't match anything in our databases. Their reactor is putting out more power than our entire fleet combined." "That's impossible," Vextar said, but his voice lacked confidence. "Sir, I've been checking our records of human encounters. Something doesn't add up." Vextar turned to face the officer. "Explain." "Every human ship we've seen before was small and lightly armed. We assumed that was their best technology. But now I'm thinking those were just scout ships." The terrible truth was starting to dawn on Vextar. The humans had been watching them, studying them, learning from them. Every time a human ship visited an alien port, they were gathering intelligence. Every trade mission was really a spy mission. On the Leviathan, Captain Morrison received an urgent transmission from the assembled alien fleet. The message was simple and direct. Leave immediately or face the consequences. Morrison showed the message to Commander Bennett. What do you think, Lisa? I think they still don't understand what they're dealing with, Bennett replied. Should we send a response? Yes, but not the one they expect. Morrison opened a channel that would broadcast to every ship in the system. When he spoke, his voice was calm and steady. This is Captain Morrison of the UES Leviathan. I've received your demand that we leave. I want you to understand something. We didn't come here to start a fight, but we won't run from one either. There's an old saying from Earth, speak softly and carry a big stick. We've been speaking softly for 20 years. Now you get to see the stick. The alien response was swift. Ships from 12 different civilizations began moving into attack formation. The largest fleet in galactic history was forming up to face one human ship. Dr. Alan Cooper watched the alien movements from his science station. Captain, they're bringing everything they have. 3,000 ships and counting. Are you worried, Doctor? Morrison asked. Cooper smiled. Sir, I've seen what this ship can do. I'm more worried about them. The alien fleet was impressive by their standards. Ships from the Hegemony, the Trade Federation, the Crystal Empire, and 9 other major powers. Each vessel represented centuries of alien engineering and design. They were built for speed, efficiency, and elegant combat, but they weren't built to fight humans. Chief Engineer Ryan Mitchell was in the engine room, watching his instruments with satisfaction. The Leviathan's reactor was running perfectly. The experimental gravity drive was operating within normal parameters. All weapon systems showed green across the board. How are we looking, Ryan? Came Morrison's voice over the intercom. Everything's perfect, Captain. This ship is ready for whatever they want to throw at us. The Leviathan represented 20 years of human innovation, driven by anger and determination. When the aliens attacked Earth's colonies, they thought they were teaching humans a lesson about their place in the galaxy. Instead, they created something they never expected, a unified, focused humanity determined to never be victims again. Back on the alien fleet, commanders were having second thoughts. Up close, the human ship was even more intimidating. Its hull was covered in weapons they couldn't identify. Its armor looked thick enough to stop anything they could fire at it. Sir, said an officer on Vextar's ship, are we sure about this? That ship could probably take on our entire fleet by itself. Impossible, Vextar replied. But he didn't sound convinced. It's one ship against 3,000. Numbers have to count for something. What Vextar didn't know was that humans had been studying galactic military tactics for decades. They knew exactly how alien fleets operated, what their weaknesses were, and how to exploit them. On the Leviathan, the ship's artificial intelligence called Oracle was analyzing the alien formation. In seconds, it identified every ship type, predicted their likely tactics, and calculated optimal firing solutions. Oracle has finished its analysis, reported Lieutenant Karen White from the tactical station. It says the alien fleet will try to surround us and attack from all sides. Standard galactic doctrine. And our response? Morrison asked. Oracle recommends we let them get into position first, make them feel confident, then show them why that's a mistake. Morrison nodded. Human military thinking was different from alien tactics. Where aliens preferred elegant, predictable battles, Humans embraced chaos and adaptability. They had learned to turn their enemies' strengths against them. The alien fleet finished moving into position. 3,000 ships formed a sphere around the Leviathan, with the human vessel sitting in the center like a trapped animal. Admiral Vextar opened a communication channel. "Human captain, you are surrounded and outnumbered. Surrender now and we will show mercy." Morrison's response surprised everyone. "Admiral, I appreciate the offer, but I have a counter-proposal. Take a close look at our ship. Really look at it. Then ask yourself, does this look like a ship built by people who surrender?" For the first time, Vextar really examined the human vessel. Every line of its construction spoke of violence and determination. This wasn't a ship built for exploration or trade. This was a weapon designed for one purpose: winning wars. Dr. Patricia Kane, the Leviathan's xenobiologist, had been studying the alien communications. She found something interesting. "Captain," she said, "I've been analyzing their fleet coordination. They're not used to working together. Each species has different communication protocols, different tactical doctrines. They're trying to fight as one fleet, but they're really just a bunch of separate groups." "Divide and conquer," Morrison said. "Exactly. If we can break their formation, they'll probably start getting in each other's way." The standoff continued for several hours. The alien fleet held position, waiting for orders. The Leviathan sat motionless, apparently trapped. But humans are patient hunters. They wait for the right moment to strike. That moment came when Admiral Vextar made a critical mistake. Frustrated by the human ship's refusal to surrender, he ordered all ships to fire a warning shot at the same time. 3,000 alien weapons fired at once, creating a light show visible from the planet below. Energy beams and plasma bolts converged on the Leviathan from every direction. The attack lasted 30 seconds. When the light faded, the alien fleet waited to see the results. The Leviathan was completely undamaged. "Impossible," Vextar whispered. Morrison opened a general communication channel. "Thank you for the demonstration. Now let us show you what human engineering can do." The Leviathan's main guns rotated toward the alien fleet. These weren't the elegant energy weapons that aliens preferred. These were massive kinetic cannons designed to punch through any armor ever built. "Fire," Morrison said calmly. The sound of the Leviathan's guns was like thunder in space. Solid metal projectiles launched at incredible speeds tore through the alien formation. In 5 seconds, 47 alien ships were disabled, their weapons destroyed, and their engines dead. The alien fleet recoiled in shock. Their most powerful weapons hadn't even scratched the human ship. But one volley from the humans had crippled nearly 50 vessels. "This is Admiral Vextar. To all ships," came the panicked transmission. "Reform the line. Prepare for full assault." But it was too late. The aliens' confidence was broken. They finally understood what they were really facing: a ship and crew that had been preparing for this fight for 20 years. The galaxy had stopped breathing, waiting to see what the humans would do next.